All right.
All right, Pat. So I'm joined today by St. John Vianney graduate class of 2019, my good friend Pat Walther. Pat, how are you?
Doing pretty good. Doing pretty good. Just got back from North Carolina, so pretty nice. Just
Awesome to hear. I know you're trying to do what you can to cope with things at this time, and obviously you're excited to hopefully at some point, we don't know when, get down back down to NC State and
yeah,
continue with your engineering degree and everything.
fingers crossed, hoping for the fall, but we'll see. Just kind of taking things, one day at a time. All we really
For
can do at
sure.
this point.
And I'm definitely excited to have you today. Want to talk a little bit of a sport you're quite familiar with, the sport of volleyball. Of course, in high
Yes.
school, you were a soccer and volleyball player. Took the winter off, but you were active in
Mhm.
the fall and the spring. And think we can we'll learn a little bit from you today. So my first question is for you: how how did you get involved with the sport, and how did you think that the sport of volleyball kind of helped you and prepared you for some of the other things that you were able to do in life?
So, really funny story, actually. I got involved in volleyball because I was in a computer science class my freshman year with one of our senior volleyball players, my good friend, Mr. Austin Schlesinger, great guy. And he one day mentioned it to me casually that we had a volleyball team. I came in thinking I was going to throw the discus like I had in middle school and had some success with it. But he had mentioned the sport to me and he had pestered me about it for about a week or so. So what I did was I said, okay, I'll go talk to our coach with you. Um, so he brought me up to the room and Miss Gadd, our coach, her husband is our assistant coach, Mr. Gadd. So we call them Mr. and Miss rather than coach because it's easier to not get them confused.
Right.
Um, and I walked in the room and she said, "Oh, you're looking to try out for volleyball," and did not give me an option and said, "I will see you March 1st." And the rest was history on that. Um, so I kind of went, didn't really know what was going on. I didn't know that it was different from gym class volleyball. I learned very quickly. Um, but basically, volleyball, she had us do a lot of things where we weren't so much volleyball players, but she had us be athletes. There wasn't a single one of us who was solely a volleyball player at the time. We were football players, we were soccer players, basketball players. We had a wrestler on the team actually at one point in time. Um, Wrestled and played football. We had cross country runners on the team, but all of us, it was our secondary sport. So basically, in terms of being an athlete, it helped us because we did a lot of cross training in the off season and a lot of just working on our athletic ability in terms of volleyball. The ultimate goal is get the ball to the ground.
Mhm.
It's a very simple game in theory. Um, it doesn't have to be pretty. So what she did was she said, "Be athletes. That's your job right now." So that's kind of how volleyball helped me, especially being a soccer player, like you said. I played goalkeeper. So, volleyball, it's the same principle. You learn where the flight of the ball is, which actually helped me because the ball would come across the goal and I would already kind of see where the ball was going so that I could better position myself and how to leg up. Um, a few other soccer players played volleyball with me. We said the same thing. Um, we had basketball players who said the same thing. We had a guy who a lot of people know from around here, Micah Clark, who played volleyball with us, went on, played football at Rutgers, very good wrestler too. Went to AC, if I'm not mistaken, once or twice. Quote me if I'm wrong there, Rosa. But basically, Micah, he even said that it helped him with his footwork. So a lot of things that we did in volleyball translated into other sports. Um, and then kind of just in terms of helping me in life, volleyball, our coach made it very, very difficult on us. Um, she expected a lot out of us. There was a lot of order in how we did things. You were to be at practice at X time. Practice started at X time. If you were late, your team suffered. You didn't want your team to suffer. You know, everything was punctual. Everything was rehearsed. Everything was a routine, which I think helped me a lot, especially when I got to college, of getting in a routine and choreographing everything. so that I was very prepared walking in to all of my endeavors rather than unprepared. Um, and then obviously, the long summer workouts, the hard work that gets put in every sport, just learning to push through things no matter
Now,
what.
Pat, tell me a little bit about the landscape of not only New Jersey high school volleyball but also short conference volleyball. You were privileged enough to go to a school that had the sport of volleyball that you were able to take up and really be successful in, but not so many schools have this sport. And of course, volleyball is a little bit interesting because you do have the two seasons where in other sports the guys and the girls season is one time of the year.
Yeah, so in the guys game, we have three divisions, unlike the traditional six divisions that we've had in the short conference. You have A North, A Central, and A South. And in each division, there's either 7 or 8 teams. So depending on the year, it's either 21 to 24 teams, depending on who is a varsity program or not. Because of Title IX, we have to be compliant with that. So some years you can have one program, some years you can't. Um, it's just not very prevalent in comparison to other sports, with it being the spring season, because the spring season, as we know, is baseball season here in the shore. We have some of the best baseball in the state of New Jersey, if not the best baseball in the state of New Jersey. So volleyball kind of gets overlooked, and then lacrosse also. And then the girls' season we have in the fall, which is soccer season. You know, Girls soccer in the short conference is very, very popular and is very, very good.
So many sports that kind of intersect with each other. So when you think about volleyball, especially in the spring, I think just a lot of people trying to get them to be in the gym again, I think is really hard. And you told me a lot of different instances where you guys sort of embrace that time because everybody wants to be outside and you got everybody coming in from their outdoor practices, but you
Oh
guys
yeah,
are pretty much in the gym all day still.
yeah, in a hot gym all day long.
Mm-hmm.
You learn to enjoy it. Um, you kind of become a family because you're kind of the overlooked sport in a sense where not that they don't care about you, it's just we're known, we associate other sports with those times of the year. So, you have baseball, so all of a sudden you're practicing and you're going to dig a ball, which is more affectionately, as gym class calls it, bumping it. Um, and all of a sudden the baseball team walks by, or the softball team walks by, or some of the cross country runners walk, or track runners walk by, or the throwers, or in the fall the girls have to deal with the football team, or the soccer teams walking by. So you kind of just learn to embrace stuff like that. Doesn't really bother us. We all have very thick skin as volleyball players. It's something you learn in about a week.
You mentioned obviously Title IX. I think that's a very important point to address because I know a lot of students and a lot of coaches enjoy getting involved with volleyball, and a lot of schools I know at Point Boro, of course.
Hmm.
We all know how much I'm involved with everything going on there and all that. I know every year we used to have sort of this like volleyball tournament, but it was a very low scale tournament, more or less for people to have fun. And I think a lot of schools like to have something like that because of the fact that it's so hard, to get the sport on campus and to have it where, it can be a sport that can compete with other sports during that time of the year. But of course, as you said with Title IX, it's a very, it's a hard thing to sort of overcome. And where do you see that being a factor in terms of, trying to get volleyball at more schools and where do you see the sport growing over the next, 5 to 10 years or so?
um, I have to say there's still a lot of room for improvement in the girls' game.
Mm-hmm.
The guys' game will only go as far as the girls' game can go. So we currently in the shore conference have 30 volleyball schools. So you have
Much
six.
lower, if I can interject, from the 43 other schools that compete in the short conference. So it's about probably like it's over 10 then difference between, you know, what we would have in other sports compared to volleyball then.
Hmm. Yeah. So there's a lot of schools that have very high quality athletes that don't have a guys program and don't have a girls program as well. Point Pleasant Borough being one of them. Um,
Yeah,
where
that's certainly been one of the challenges that I think a lot of people have brought up with the spring season. And a lot of guys, and probably, I can't obviously speak for everybody, but I would imagine that the girls too would like to have a volleyball program. And especially with the new surf club that's been added at the school, there are a lot of sports and a lot of clubs and different activities that people are trying to add. And that's a whole other topic, obviously, on its own, as, we get new clubs and new sports that are forming.
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be very, very successful in the borough. Beach, as I don't know if you know, they have a girls team.
Right.
They're still kind of building a program at this point. But basically, with building it in the borough, you have everything you need in terms of a formula. You have an even number of sports to begin with. You have no girls program, you have no guys program. You can add both programs, but like you said, you have a surf club. It's just, I think it's the question of, do we have enough interested athletes to go around? Because you guys are a beach town, everyone at some point, one time or another, is playing volleyball in the summer. They understand the basics
And that's
of.
interesting that you bring up that Beach has a team, and I know Brick Memorial has a very successful girls team, and that's one of the things I know that a lot of their students are involved in is the whole beach volleyball aspect of the game.
Yeah. Beach volleyball, actually, we all, for the most part, if you play volleyball in the short conference, we're so lucky that we live right next to the beach. It's a very easy way in the summer to work on your skills because indoor volleyball, we play 6 people on the court on each side. Beach volleyball, you play 2 people on the court on each side. So you quickly have to learn how to adapt. So my position that I played, I wasn't so much when we would play formal 6 person in the spring. My skills weren't so much in terms of setting the ball or digging the ball, but when we played beach, because there was 2 people, it forced me then to have to learn to do those things. And I think that's also a way that it would be very easy for a program in Borough to not just start but be very successful very quickly. Other Ocean County towns have gone and done this and have been very, very successful. Jackson Liberty, Jackson Memorial, both very, very good boys programs now. Jackson Liberty is a very, very good girls program too. Finished 17-10 last year, very respectable record. 15-7 in the short conference. Jackson Memorial had a very good year a couple of years ago. So there's room there, and it's very good or it's very easy, I should say, for the program to get very good very quickly. And I think would be something that would be very enjoyable for a lot of
I
people.
guess I guess that leads me to my next point. Volleyball, as we speak, we bring up the point that there are schools that have the capacity to get involved and can still get involved as time goes on. Where has volleyball originated? Before high school really became a big thing. Are there clubs? Are there other places that people can play volleyball who maybe don't have programs and want to get involved with it, and maybe these clubs can act as feeder programs for high schools and things like that?
Yeah, so we have a program that we all play through on the beach in the summer called Great American Volleyball. We all
Okay.
refer to it as GAV. So it's a couple of nights a week. We'll train. So just like any other sport, we have practice. We'll go through drills. We'll go through our paces like usual. And then we'll play tournaments a few weekends all across the shore in the summer and the spring. It's a lot of fun. They go all the way from little kids, so like 10 years old, all the way up through, if you're 75 and want to play volleyball, you can play volleyball. There's no issue there. And then on the indoor side of things, the boys, there's not as many programs in the state of New Jersey, and particularly in the shore, but there's a lot of girls programs in the shore. Atlantic Valley is a very good program up in Monmouth County. We have Ocean County Volleyball Club, Southern Ocean Volleyball Club, which is a feeder program to Southern Regional High School, who is by far the best program all around, boys and girls, in the shore conference. Um, no doubt on that one.
It's
You have
interesting because they seem to have success in a lot of sports that a lot of people don't consider to be, the mainstream sports.
Yeah. And then back to clubs, you have Warren Six Pack, which is run out of CBA up in Lane Croft. You actually have a couple of Southern regional guys every year who will go and play up there, along with some Monmouth County guys. You have Garden State Attack, which is a boys and girls club also, just like Warren Six Pack. That's run out of my old high school. They recently just started a boys program called Lancer Volleyball Academy. We have some players um, that I used to play with and from my high school that play for Lancer Volleyball Academy. Um, and then we have East Coast Crush, which is down in southern New Jersey, but quite a few Pinelands players. So Pinelands has all of a sudden become very, very good on the girls circuit. So a lot of Pinelands players will go there and play there for for East Coast Crush. But
Yeah,
there's opportunities to play volleyball.
I definitely think it's interesting because, as you mentioned, for someone like me, I obviously don't know volleyball very well outside of watching it maybe in the Olympics or something, of that nature, because of the fact that it's not really a popular thing because, well, Point Boro doesn't have a team,
Yeah,
and there aren't a lot of teams close by where I would say, hey, I want to drive there and watch a volleyball game.
yeah. There's, Ocean County doesn't have a ton of teams. I mean, you have um, the Toms Rivers have teams on the boys' side. Central Regional has a team on the boys' side. Jackson, both Jacksons, Southern Regional, Donovan, Lacey, Barnegat, and Manchester, and that's it. You know, so there's not a ton of volleyball, especially for the boys to go watch and say, I want to play that. We are very lucky, though, that the Shore Conference tournament every year is in Lakewood at Georgian Court, your alma mater.
Right.
Um, and that always brings a lot of quality volleyball to Ocean County. So I'm hoping that for the sport's future, that athletic directors who will see the girls' teams go play there and have the potential to make a couple of changes here and there, and then add a boys' team, and those athletic directors who don't have either, going and watching how much pride these teams take in their programs and seeing how much these kids enjoy what they're doing and how high quality the play is, and say, I don't have a guys program, I don't have a girls program. We need to start one now.
So you
Um,
think over time that volleyball can be something that a lot of people want to get involved in. I mean, we've seen local colleges, as you see, as you mentioned, with Georgian Court being so successful with their women's volleyball team.
yeah,
They don't have a men's volleyball team yet, but having such a developed program right in the heart of the high school shore conference probably is a big reason to say that many athletes will want to get involved with volleyball, and particularly as schools to continue to develop with their programs and more programs begin to be added.
oh yeah. I mean, from when I started playing my freshman year in spring of 2016 to here we are spring 2020, there's been so many additions, not just in the shore conference, but in volleyball across the state. And there's so many schools that are now starting to start JV programs on, per se, the guys' side or the girls' side, or on both sides. Like Modern Day, last I heard, they were working on a program. To name one, the Vianney School was trying to figure out interest in volleyball potentially. Um, just to name the short conference, and then you go across the state and they're adding programs like there's no tomorrow every single year. And these programs are getting to be very successful very quickly. Um, you still have your hierarchy that are the traditional volleyball players in the state of New Jersey and in the short conference, but there's a lot of room for teams to grow and to come into the fold and be very successful very, very quickly within a couple of years.
Definitely. I mean, when you look at volleyball, I think it is tough because, as we mentioned, it's in a spring season where there's a lot of things going on. But at the same time, I think there are people that have followed volleyball, and volleyball from a cultural standpoint has always been a big part of this country. And I think much like baseball, I think a lot of people, even if you're not from the United States, I think having your kids play volleyball is something that a lot of people take a lot of pride in, because it is a hard sport. It is something that, has an opportunity to be played on the, on the Olympic level and even past college. Which I think is huge, because it's a way to continue the sport, and it's a sport that can be developed and played, throughout, a long period of time, unlike some other sports where basically it's high school and college and then that's it.
Yeah, I mean, and we're also very lucky here in the short conference too. There's been a lot of very, very good players to come out of the short conference to look up to. For those when you get involved with the sport, I'll just name one because a lot of people know the name Mike Gesicki.
Oh, of
Penn
course.
State, Miami Dolphins, makes a lot of money to catch a football. He actually was a high school volleyball player and probably is one of the best New Jersey high school volleyball players of all
I
time.
would say it was his best sport, even better than football.
Oh yeah, Mike. Ironically, not a lot of people know this, but his first recruiting letter from Penn State was not a Penn State football letter. It was a Penn State volleyball letter. They have a very successful men's program out there, women too. Um, but in terms of being a two-sport athlete, a lot of people know the name Mike Gesicki in the short conference. You know, kid was just phenomenal athlete. So I think that's somebody that a lot of young athletes can really look to and say, volleyball wasn't his main sport, but when you look at it, it helped him become a better football player. It helped him become an all-state basketball player, earn a scholarship to Penn State, get drafted by the Miami Dolphins, make a living doing what he loves. Um, so I really think that could be a really good selling point in terms of trying to help volleyball grow in the short conference.
Pat, who would you say is your typical, volleyball athlete? Obviously, a guy like you is very tall and, much like a basketball built you have. Obviously, that's probably a big target area that if volleyball was to become more popular, you would probably be seeing a lot of probably basketball players, I would imagine, and probably a lot of football players too. Some a mix of size and strength, right?
Yeah, so in volleyball, you need what's called a libero. They play in the back row, and their job is to just dig the ball all the time. So they're a small guy who's very, very strong. So I mean, you could look to anybody really for that on the guy's side. I think anywhere from a wrestler who wrestles at like 132 or 145 that's only 5'6", 5'7", 5'8" could be a phenomenal libero because they have to cover the whole court space. They're very quick. Wrestlers are very, very quick people. The same can be said about a defensive back on a football team. Same principle. They can play libero very, very well. You're mainly looking, though, for quick guys. Height is great. Height's not necessary. You want quick guys, very high athletic IQ, um, and people who are very, very coachable because you can teach them to play volleyball very quickly. It's not like baseball, where it takes time for a guy to develop a swing. It takes time to develop, how to pitch. Wrestling, it takes time to learn different moves. Volleyball can be taught very, very quickly. Most guys don't come into high school playing it. Um, Myself, I didn't come into high school playing it, but there's no doubt that as long as you're quick, you have a good athletic IQ, and you're willing to learn, that's all you need. That's all my head coach ever said.
So for a town like Point Boro, who, as you mentioned, has a lot of athletes that are that maybe have grown up playing volleyball on the beach, and obviously a school that has a lot of athletes and a bunch of different programs, you think it would be pretty easy to integrate volleyball into a
Oh
school
yeah.
like Point Boro?
Oh yeah. I mean, you have even offensive linemen can play volleyball. Like I had mentioned, Micah Clark. Micah Clark was an offensive lineman. He was probably one of the best volleyball players to ever come through to come through St. John Vianney. You can have really athletic, wide receivers. Their job is to jump. Volleyball, the difference between most sports and volleyball in terms of jumping is you don't have to jump to your peak every single time in football and every single time in basketball and baseball and other sports. Volleyball, you're training yourself to jump to the peak every single time, your maximum vertical leap. Um, so, I think that could be a really good selling point to guys and to girls where you can tell them your vertical leap's going to be higher. You're going to be a better athlete. You're going to be able to catch more passes. You're going to be able to go up and snag a couple more balls. As an infielder, you're going to be able to get a couple that are going over your head. As a basketball player, it's going to be easier to get rebounds. But yeah, I mean, I think you can really pull from just about any single sport and have a really successful team in Borough.
Of course, you're going to be a little bit restricted by the fact that it does land in the spring season, which I guess there's really nothing we can do about that. Obviously, as we've seen
Yeah.
now, we're just trying to get the sports in that schools already have. And when you think about adding a sport, I think that's one of the challenges. But certainly, it's not end all be all because you do have other sports that, of course, can be played during that time.
Oh yeah. I mean, spring, you're going to have some guys that normally would take the spring off. Those football players who are also wrestlers, for instance, who would take the spring off, or those soccer players who might run winter track in the winter are going to say, instead of letting me do spring track to stay in shape, let me go play volleyball instead because I'm going to be training myself to do other things to help me play soccer. And things like that, I think could be really helpful.
I was going to mention that because I'm sure for track and field athletes, there's a lot of elements of volleyball that are probably quite similar to track and field. Just the motion of, as you mentioned, things like jumping and just that natural forward motion of aggression. Things like
Mm-hmm.
just like you said, the discus and things like that probably are very comparable.
Oh yeah, your footwork. I mean, volleyball, whether people realize it or not, footwork is just as important as being able to serve the ball and being able to hit the ball. Um, because if your footwork's not right, especially if you were like me who played up at the net, one, you're going to break your ankle, and two, you're never going to block the ball. You're never going to be in a position where you can pass the ball. You're never going to be in a position where you can do all of these things. It really forces you to think and really forces you to be an athlete and to increase your athletic IQ a lot, which I found very helpful. And a lot of my old teammates and my old rivals and old opponents found very helpful when we would see each other on the soccer field, or other people would see each other on the basketball court, or whatever it may be.
Definitely. I think, and I think a big reason why we're having this conversation is because, of course, when it comes to, Point Boro and things that I've seen with the school over the years, when I was in high school, there weren't too many things being added. There were a couple things, as I mentioned, the surf club that's looking to become, a varsity sport was discontinued in 2010, but now, of course, as of last year, it's back. And
Yeah.
and then the lacrosse program, which back in 2014 that was reestablished and then finally became a varsity sport after having a girls lacrosse program for so long. So I think when you see the progress that those teams have made, it allows us to have this conversation in regards to Point Boro. And as you know, obviously the more sports the better, and that's where I would really follow it on a big time scale at this point.
Oh yeah. And it's very easy too for teams to, or for student bodies to rally around these teams too. There's some schools that we go to, and on the boys and the girls side, where they get a student section for volleyball. This is something the kids look forward to going and watching because it's very exciting. Volleyball is not like many sports where the players have to restrict their emotions, you know, because of the game is still going on or something of that nature. You can be Monmouth, if we remember the Monmouth basketball bench, you can be like that on the bench every single point. That's volleyball culture. And that's a lot of fun for a lot of people, even in the stands. And there's a lot of school pride with it too, that I think comes along with the culture of playing volleyball.
Definitely interesting. Pat, look, I want to say thanks for coming on. Really enjoyed this talk with you. Obviously,
Yeah.
we'll see how volleyball can expand over the coming years. And I don't meet too many volleyball players, but of course, we were fortunate enough to meet. And I guess for a little bit of a background for people that don't know you too well, I know there's a lot of people. Shout out to those who do know you because
Yeah.
obviously they know you're a good guy and I know you support me in supporting what I do, and that's always a
Hmm.
great thing. But if we, of course, we saw each other at that Jackson Memorial Point Borough scrimmage, and we've known each other since then.
Well, 2018, yeah.
That was the first time we met in person. Yeah. So, I think all that's really cool. And as I mentioned before, you don't really meet too many different volleyball players. And I was fortunate enough to learn, what volleyball was like through you. And of course, when you talk about it as much as you do, I get to learn a little bit about it. So that's also
Yeah.
awesome because obviously I'm always looking to learn new things about different sports.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Rosa.
No
Spreading some
problem.
awareness about this sport, that means a lot to
Hopefully,
a lot of people.
hopefully people can kind of learn a little bit about it, and people that are interested, obviously, I think it's a good thing to kind of get them started in the right direction, and hopefully we can get a volleyball team at Point Boro, and of course all those tournaments have gone really well. Unfortunately, there have been some injuries in the past, but
Yeah,
that's why I also feel like having a volleyball team would be something else, because those kids that get hurt, unfortunately, in tournaments can say, hey, I was at least a member of the varsity team, and they put their best foot forward for a varsity program, not just for a tournament. It's frustrating sometimes.
exactly. Yeah.
But Pat, I hope you have a good one. Stay safe with everything going on, and
Yeah,
of
thank you,
course,
Rosa.
we'll see each other
Stay
soon.
safe. Yeah, I'll see you soon.
See
Thank
you
you.
later. Bye
All right.
bye.